to our panel celebrating the horror and humanity of Mike Flanagan's universe. I hope you're all as excited as we are to be here. We're so excited to talk about these shows. My name is Kailee Brown, and we're going to be doing this panel a little bit differently. Each of us have taken one of the shows, so we're going to kind of each be moderating one of those shows. So we'll go down and introduce ourselves, and then we'll start off talking with Hill House. So, my name is Kailee Brown. I am a filmmaker based here in Salt Lake City. I've worked with Apple Juice Productions, where we made narrative content for and by women, having women behind the scenes. I'm a cinematographer and an editor, and I absolutely love TV shows. I love horror too, but I would actually say Hill House is what got me into horror, so I'm really excited to talk about these series and talk about Mike Flanagan's work. So, Samantha, go ahead.
Awesome. I'm Samantha. I am a English major, horror connoisseur, TV consumer, all around just insatiable person for any horror aspect of any type. So this is my bread and butter. Super happy to be here. Yeah.
Hey all, I'm Colin Hinckley, also an avid horror fan. I'm the author of The Black Lord, as well as a member of the Horror Writers Association of America. My work has appeared in Tales to Terrify and The Satirist and other places. I'm also a OG Mike Flanagan fan. I watched Absentia around the time it came out, for anybody who knows that movie. Excellent film. So yeah, really excited to talk Mike Flanagan and his scary, beautiful worlds.
Like all of these folks here, and you, I hope. I'm a huge fan of Mike Flanagan, and especially these 4 series that we're going to talk about. My name is Amanda Taylor. I'm a pop culture journalist. I worked here in Utah and as well in Los Angeles, where I currently live for about a decade, writing about movies, music, and TV, which is my probably first love. I'm also a filmmaker and have made many web series, so I love serialized fiction. And I'm really excited to talk about this one in particular because I'm a big adaptations girly. Everything I've made has started out as a book. Just like these, they all have a source material, which we will get into. And yeah, just really excited to be here. It's gonna be so fun. Okay, Samantha's gonna get this started off with Hill House.
Oh boy. First of all, let me just say I feel very honored to be able to get to cover Hill House. Amanda and Colin both adore Hill House very much, so for them to succeed it to me, I feel very honored. So I did just come up with some discussion questions, so that's kind of what I'm going to start out with. I want to start out with my most simple question that I'd like to just go down the line, which is, what would the Red Room be for you?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question.
Yes, feel free to think on it for a second.
Yeah, I'll think about it. If anybody else has a thought now, they can share first.
If you have an answer, Samantha, maybe.
Yeah, you should.
Mine would definitely be, I don't know, I go between either like Theo's dance room or Olivia's reading room. Definitely one of those. Either like a dance room or like a cozy library, I think is what it would be for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, I also love Theo's dance room. It'd probably be a dance room or just like a fun, like cozy playroom. I
Cute.
just love toys and collecting toys, so.
I like that.
Yeah, for me it would be a library, probably filled with every horror book ever written.
Lots of Stephen King.
Lots of Stephen King, you know it, of course. And a full bar in there as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this, and like I'm gonna tell you the honest answer, which is like a room with a stage and mirrors and lights. But maybe a reading room would be a little more. That's a more acceptable answer. Let's go with that one.
Good. No, I like that. Awesome. And then one of the things I really wanted to talk about with Hill House was obviously the episode of Two Storms, when they're kind of doing the flashback from what happened at the Hill House with the Crane family when they were young, and to Eleanor's funeral in modern day. I really love that kind of when the Two Storms happens, we're seeing the kids from Hugh's perspective, as he's kind of seeing them as rapidly switching between their adults and their kid selves. I just love the technical choice of having the younger kids come into the room and be in a scene, and then have the camera rotate, and then they're the adults again. It's just fantastic. Anyone want to add more on Two Storms?
I'd just like to say real quick,
Please.
there are also two storms in Midnight Mass,
Right.
which I watched it again recently, and I thought that was interesting because in Midnight Mass there is the storm that washes all the cats up onto the shore, if you guys remember that.
Oh,
And
I
then
try to
there's-
forget.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, but then there's the storm that Father Pruitt gets lost in Damascus.
You're right.
Yeah, and both those storms have important, thematic elements to the story. So Flanagan loves a storm,
Yeah.
especially two storms. So
Love that.
Yeah.
Thanks for making that connection.
Yeah, The Haunting of Hill House in particular is an interesting one because it's about childhood trauma, and so it's kind of showing like how they were affected as children and how it sort of transformed them into the adults that they were at that moment in the story. Was super fun to bring those two juxtapositions together, and where we had kind of seen them in separate timelines, they were all of a sudden all in the same place. And like you said, seeing it from the perspective of their father and having known them through all of these periods and being able to he's the only one who can merge all of those sort of versions of those kids.
Yes.
It was brilliant on a storytelling level. And then the technical genius, which I'll let Kailee talk about a little bit more, of just these long shots where people are running in and out of frame and you can kind of not see the cuts. I think you probably have a number for me, but
Yes, as a filmmaker, Kailee.
I don't actually have a number, sorry.
it's a very long scene. It's 17 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
long.
long.
And I just think where this show was kind of an intro for some people, to the genre and stuff. There was so much going on that was way beyond what you would assume horror is, I think. And the scares in that episode in particular are so subtle.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Two Storms. That was such a fun episode to watch for the first time, especially from a technical perspective. Just long takes are a cinematographer's bread and butter, I feel like. We got to do one. We made a Halloween rom-com all together, and we did a really long take for that, actually a few of them. And it's really fun for, I think, everyone involved, both actors and filmmakers. I mean, I can't imagine how fun it would be for the actors in that episode to be working with their younger selves. Usually when you're work in any capacity, working, the older actors are never going to work with their younger selves because they can't be in the same scene. So they were all there kind of on set together, which is so fun. And yeah, just the complications of it all makes it so incredible. And yeah, the takes, I just can't even imagine how they did that. And I know they reconfigured the house to make it so they could actually shoot up to 17 minutes or however long it is, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I love that you pointed that out, because you're the one who does the film work, so I know it was impressive if you're saying, wow, that's very impressive. Awesome, guys. Thanks for all responding to that. I have another discussion question that I'd like to propose, which is, how does Mike Flanagan take every episode of Hill House and make it more and more tragic? It seems like every episode ends and you think, certainly it can't get any sadder. Certainly it's going to get happier. Certainly it'll get scarier and not more sad. But it just gets so much sadder as you go on. And even, not just with Hill House, but I do want to just briefly touch on just how sorrowful all of Mike Flanagan's things are. You get kind of these innocent people stuck in these really bad situations where they can't really get out of them. So I'm just kind of curious, what are your guys' thoughts on how does Mike make every episode more and more tragic?
I think we do fear tragedy. I think we fear that deep sadness that we're talking about in this, which is loss, grief, all of those things. So I think it's still scary. And I remember the discourse around The Haunting of Hill House, people were just why is this so sad? There's 5 jump scares and then I'm just sobbing. And I think that's why these shows, it's why you're probably here, it's why we're here certainly, is they're just so human. We're watching this family go through something, and we feel like we're a part of it, whether you identify with a specific character. I know that you do, you have the gloves on right now. Or you could insert yourself as an additional sibling or whatever. You can connect to those things. And I think we fear those feelings of like grief and loss, just as much as we fear like being scared by a ghost. So it's still scary.
Great point.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, it is a ghost story, so there's just an inherent sadness in that because it's about dead people, but it's also, you know, all these people who who die and become ghosts. They're still in the house because they've had tragic circumstances. So every layer that you peel away, it's like, oh, that's another tragedy. Oh, that's another tragedy. Oh God, these people are stuck here because of their tragedy. You know.
Yeah. I love that. I think of Hill House. I'll save that for a second. Sorry, Kailee, you go first.
No, go ahead. You keep going.
I was just going to bring up the source material for a quick second and say, although the Hill House TV show is very different from the Shirley Jackson book, I think Hill House is the main character, and the book is kind of like a different story still involving the house, and then this show is still a different story but still involving the house. I think Hill House is the main character of Hill House, not necessarily the Crane family. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to throw that in there.
That's great. Yeah, if anyone has anything to add about the source material.
I went to Bennington College in Vermont, which is
I did too.
which is where Shirley Jackson wrote The Haunting of Hill House, and the house that the house is based on is on the Bennington College campus. It's called Jennings Hall, and boy, it's a scary house. It's definitely haunted. It sits on the top of a hill. It overlooks the entire campus. I recommend looking it up. It's a gorgeous place, but as a writer, I can see that, you know, if I just saw that house, I'd be like, oh, that's definitely haunted. Oh, that's definitely a book. Oh boy, I have to get this down on paper. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that would translate.
And you're right. I mean, let's give a little commotion to Shirley Jackson.
Yeah.
A brilliant woman.
Yes.
If you haven't, you should read any of her stuff. She writes great nonfiction too, which I don't think people know. But she...
For a different panel.
Yeah, she writes a lot about just feeling trapped. She was in a domestic lifestyle that she wasn't super loving. So I think you're right that the house itself and the fact that they are trapped there and that they continue to trap each other there, which is really interesting, is very Shirley Jackson. So maybe it's not 100% one-to-one of the book, but I think the essence of the house is very well captured.
It's a vibe adaptation.
Very well
Yeah,
put.
vibe
The essence of the house, very well put.
Yes.
Anything you want to add, Kailee?
No, just any last thoughts about Hill House before we move on to Bly Manor from anyone?
No.
I want to know what you guys think is the scariest ghost.
Oh, that's...
Oh, I actually did write, excuse me, I did write down in my notes, the scariest part of Hill House for anyone in a family is all their dirty laundry being aired during 2 storms. That's the scariest part of the show for
The
me.
ghost is the drama, the gossip.
Oh, I'm trying to think.
I really, the guy, I think it's William Hill, right? The really tall guy that floats around.
Would be too.
Okay, thank
He's
you to the
pretty
people who
scary.
also read the backstories. I know all the ghosts' names. I'm really into this show.
Yes, we're
Yeah.
very into the lore of it all. So thank you for knowing William Hill.
Yeah, I think that's probably who I would choose as the scariest ghost as.
Yeah, if you want to, you can
Terrifying.
go on Reddit actually, and you can look up the backstories of the Hill House ghosts, and they have little
Poppy.
written- Poppy is in there.
Oh,
Edward is
Poppy.
in there.
Poppy's terrifying.
Yeah, Poppy's freaky.
I think for me, it's got to be the bent neck lady. I mean, it's just...
Fair enough.
Is she even really a ghost for most of the story? I mean, the time works so weird in Hill House, but the existential terror of that and just the moment she understands who the bent neck lady is.
Oh yeah. And when Hugh and Luke do as well,
Yeah.
when they're like, oh, that was definitely, oh yeah.
Yeah, that's among the scariest things I've ever seen depicted. Just totally existentially terrifying.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, we're gonna move on to Bly Manor, which is what I have now. I honestly love talking about, I think it makes a lot of sense to talk about Bly Manor in comparison to Hill House because it came out as the second, they called it still The Haunting of Bly Manor, and it almost became
They're kind of like
it
sisters.
almost became a 2-season series, yeah, and they decided to make them limited instead and go a different direction, which I love, but and I think it's fun because they have so many of the same cast members from Hill House that they then bring into Bly Manor, and specifically Victoria Pedretti and Oliver Jackson Cohen, who we see in pretty different roles, especially
super different.
and Henry Thomas too. Like we see them in very different roles. But I just wanted to ask like what your initial thoughts are on Bly Manor and go from there.
Oh, I love Bly Manor. I'm very I'm very attracted to the idea of like haunted dolls and like spooky dolls moving around on their own. So I loved Bly Manor.
I might make a couple enemies, but I don't think Bly Manor is his strongest. I think the biggest issue for me is the escalation. The third to last episode when Victoria Pedretti's character, I'm forgetting her name, but
Danny?
Danny, when she gets attacked by the woman in the lake, and then it's just a whole episode of backstory about the woman in the lake.
Yeah.
Really killed the momentum for me, but great performances, some really interesting stuff about getting tucked away in memories, and some interesting ideas. I just don't think it coheres entirely to me.
In comparison to Hill House,
Yeah,
Sure.
I
some
mean,
of
it's
that
hard.
is the source material. I mean, when you think of like a horror writer you're going to adapt, does your brain immediately go, Henry James?
Yeah, no.
It's a weird choice. It's an unexpected choice that I think was kind of a bold thing. And I've read a bunch of the short stories that he sort of used to influence the various kind of threads that we're going through the Haunting of Bly Manor. And it's just really disjointed because it's a really disjointed thing that he was like drawing from. So I think that's part of it. Like as far as an adaptation, was he capturing the vibe? I don't know. Like kind of, because it was like a story within a story, which is very Victorian, which is the era that Henry James was writing in. But ultimately, like kind of a strange choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally do really like Bly Manor, which is why I'm talking about it. But I do think that it has its struggles too. It's very interesting. I think there's a lot of stuff going on, and ultimately, like the different reveals with like Peter Quint and then also the Lady in the Lake don't really match up together. So that's like my main qualm with it. But I love it otherwise. I love the characters. I think the kids are like can be really creepy and really interesting, and they're super like the Hill House kids are like all just like pretty cute. And then these kids are like, they're cute, but they're like, they have something going on. And they're struggling a little. So I think that's kind of a fun difference with it. I, of course, love Danny and Jamie's, and I just think that's like, it's such a good representation. And they show that relationship so well. The other thing I love about Bly Manor is just, they show a lot of like different types of ghosts in it, which is super interesting. Danny has Eddie, but it's almost like a ghost that she created in herself. Hannah's a ghost, but she's like still living, and then Peter's a ghost that nobody can see. Like it's just there's so many different ghosts, which I think is really cool. So I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on that actually, and like what you think of it as a ghost story.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it, but you're right. There are a lot of different type of ghosts, and a lot going on. You have the whole thing where Hannah's dead, but she's also has dementia. I love when they do that episode where she's kind of
and she
skipping
can, like, change
around
outfits and stuff too, which is crazy.
Yeah, we don't really know the parameters of
Yeah.
what it's like to be a ghost in Bly Manor. You can do some things, but you can't be
Not
seen
everything.
by
If
everyone.
you're nice, maybe you can do more things.
We need a rule book. Mike needs to get a rule book for
Yeah,
the
I
Bly
wanna
Manor
know
ghosts.
it.
Yeah, I think the strongest part about that for me is the idea of a ghost sort of getting sanded down through the centuries, and
Oh, yeah.
just like the Lady in the Lake being the original
I
one.
love that you used the term sanded down.
Such a good
That's
way to say it.
really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what they are. Hannah starts to experience that over the course of the show. She starts to lose bits of herself, and the idea of being like tucked away again. I think that's a really clever idea to like put living people into memories to like get them out of the way. There's a lot of really cool ideas in here, and just the image of the Lady in the Lake with the blank face. Ooh,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
very
so
scary.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it's sort of he's bringing it in from The Haunting of Hill House, but there were sort of these background ghosts. And I know like the internet was like, spot all the ghosts. Man, there were a lot in The Haunting of Hill House. And
There were
far fewer in Bly Manor, but you would still see them in the background, like moving or whatever, which was fun because I was sort of trained. Like, okay, look in the background, there might be more. And there
plague
were,
doctor.
which I loved. Yeah, the plague doctor with like the whole mask.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
what is going on?
The plague doctor is so crazy.
Very scary.
Yeah, super fun. Any last thoughts on Bly Manor? We get to move on.
I love Flora. She's so cute.
Flora's the cutest.
I love how she
think
says,
she's so-
it's perfectly splendid.
So fun. Okay, Colin's gonna lead us on with Midnight Mass.
Yeah. So for my money, this is the best thing that Mike Flanagan has ever made.
I agree.
I think it's an incredible piece of art. It's so tightly told. It's very novelistic, and for those of you who've seen the movie Hush, Kate Siegel's character in that movie is the author of the novel Midnight Mass, and
wow.
they discuss the story
It's
in
a
that
great
script.
tie-in.
Yeah, go back and watch it. It's very clever. They talk about Riley and his journey, a very, very fun Easter egg for Flanagan fans. Part of the reason I love this series so much is that it's so clearly like sort of a stealth adaptation of Stephen King's Salem's Lot, which is one of my all-time favorite books. I think he explores slightly different things, but I think part of what makes it so strong is his really, really intense, thorough discussion of the idea of faith and belief, and using vampirism as a metaphor for addiction, I think is also really strong. So I just wanted to sort of start by talking about faith in the show and how the different characters wield their faith, because it's not an anti-religious show by any means, and I think he really dives deep in what it means to have faith. So if you guys want to just like talk maybe about pick one or two characters and how they talk about their faith or how they wield their faith. I'll start, and I'll take the most fun one, which is Bev, who
I knew you were going to take that one.
Yeah, I mean,
Bev.
incredible performance, incredibly well written. So Bev uses her religion as a weapon, right? She uses it as a way to ostracize people, to separate people, and to really assert her dominance on the island. She uses her religion as a money laundering front, which is sort of something that's going on in the background of the show, which I find so hilarious. I think she's the example Flanagan uses as how not to wield religion, as what it looks like when religion is wielded by somebody with less than good intentions and maybe using it to their own end. And of course, she does get her comeuppance. Her final shot in the show is chef's kiss. I mean, if anybody deserved it, it was her.
Yeah. The catharsis of that
Yeah.
one.
Yes, twice over.
Yeah, she
That's
might be the
right,
worst
that's right.
villain of all of Flanagan's series.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of people being like, yes, with Bev in particular, because she's the worst. I will talk about, in sort of a counter, I'll talk about Erin Green, which is Kate Siegel's character, and she's sort of the romantic lead of the story, in a sense, if there is a romance happening really in this one. And she has this very bright faith, and she's very positive about it. It's something that is absolutely a source of good in her life. It makes her a better person. It has brought her back to herself in a way as she's dealing with some tricky life stuff. And she has this approach to it that I think is maybe it's not for everyone, but this is how it works for me. And I love that individualized. She's not out here trying to be like, everybody needs to come to church. She's like, I will be going to church. Thank you. Which I really like, because I think in the show that is all about bringing everyone into the fold. She's kind of like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's not for everyone, and can see other perspectives while also holding tightly to her own. And I think that's a really important conversation, and I'm glad that kind of religiosity was represented in the show.
Yeah, totally.
Either
You want to take it?
I mean, I think it's interesting to look at Lisa, who's a teenager having faith, especially when she experienced an accident and is in a wheelchair, and then continues to go to church and have so much faith. And then in the story, eventually she feels what she's told is she has so much faith that she gets healed, which would be insane. And so I think I love seeing how she also uses it very much for good, like Erin, and she's not really trying to bring anybody in, but you can tell that she really believes and that it's something that she hangs on to because she needs it. She's going every single day to mass, and she's really participating because this is something she needs in her life after what happened to her. It's important to her to have that, and I think it's pretty interesting to look at. And I also think it's interesting to look at and wonder where she will go like in the future, because she's obviously one of the few surviving characters, and you know, like, will she continue that faith? Like, what will it do for her?
Yeah, hopping in real quick.
Yeah.
That scene when she goes to Joe Colley's house and forgives him. That I think is one of the best examples of wielding faith for good in that circumstance, because she says, "I'm angry at you. I still hate you, but I forgive you." And that's like the kind of the most perfect encapsulation of what your faith should do. It should be a tool for getting past your own human foibles and drawbacks. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, I'll play devil's advocate here, and I'll talk about someone in the show with no faith. I'm just going to call him Matt Saracen. If you know, you know.
Riley.
Riley.
He's so interesting because he's made this big mistake. He went and served time for it. He's coming back to his, hometown, and he's not really a devout, Catholic or whatever religion they're doing on this church. Is it Catholic? Okay. So yeah, he's not really a devout Catholic. He just kind of comes to his hometown and is like, yeah, this is where I live. I don't really know what I'm doing here. And as I think it's so interesting that Mike chose to have him be turned and eventually, tell Kate Segal's character kind of what's going on. I think it was really interesting to have this person with no faith, with no conviction, with no real belief, sort of experience the vampirism firsthand and still make the decision to sacrifice himself to spread the truth about the town. It's really interesting that in a show that's so centered around religious people and around religion, you have this one character who kind of sacrifices himself, even though he's not religious at all, has no religious affiliation. He really just kind of, does the ultimate sacrifice, which is pretty Christian of him, honestly.
True.
So it is interesting that we do have a lot of people who are doing, who are very into the religious aspect, but then you also have the main character who's not involved at all in the religious aspect. Just very, very interesting of Mike to make that choice.
Yeah. And before we move on, I do just want to say there's also a Muslim character who is very devout, and we see him praying with his son.
Yeah, that is cool.
So there's a different faith being exercised while in this faith conversation, which is huge for a show like that about New England.
I just want to share a fun fact that I didn't know, but I learned this recently. Mike Flanagan actually wanted to make Midnight Mass first, but Netflix said, "Who the heck are you? We don't trust you." So they gave him Hill House and said, "If you can prove to us that you can do this, we'll let you make Midnight Mass." And I think that Midnight Mass is so fantastic and special. It's because it is a unique thing. All the other ones are adapted off of stories or books, but Midnight Mass is its own unique, glorious, perfect craft.
And right before we move on, I do want to say I think one of the reasons this is the best show is because it's the best suited for Mike Flanagan's predilection for monologues. I know we all love a Mike Flanagan monologue, but we have characters that are preachers in the show. We have characters who are going to AA meetings. We have people discussing the afterlife. These are conversations that are so well suited for monologues that it never really feels like, oh, here's somebody monologuing again. It always feels conducive to the story, and it makes sense in the context.
I was on the edge of my seat every episode, beginning to end of Midnight Mass. I could not get enough.
Yeah, and before we move on, Hamish Linklater is just unbelievable performance as Father Pruitt. Just unbelievable performance. Yeah, I wanted to.
I really hope he comes back into the Flaniverse for more stuff. If the next Flaniverse season gets to have Monsignor Pruitt, I'll be like, finally! Oh my god, finally!
That would be amazing.
Okay, on to the favorite child.
Me?
The House of the Usher.
Okay, so Follow the House of Usher is the most recent show
I gotta take the gloves off for this
It is
one.
my personal favorite show, and the first thing I want to talk about, so this is a Poe adaptation, a little more like, okay, that's a horror guy, right? We know him as writing spooky stuff. But sort of the timing of when this came out was really interesting. And it is about the slow, painful demise of a very wealthy family that has screwed over the world. And I think that part of the reason that I love this show so much is because of the catharsis. So I do want to talk just briefly. I want each of you to kind of tell me what your favorite death is. Just tell me. Just give me, like, which one were you like, yes, about?
Freddie.
I was gonna say Freddie
Oh,
too.
Frederick.
That one is terrifying and also very
Especially
satisfying.
after what he did to his wife, I was just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
He gets,
Yeah,
it's the building
Freddie,
collapses
for sure.
on him.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually,
Oh.
after a time.
And
The pit and the pendulum.
The
And the
pendulum
Got it, yeah,
thing,
yeah.
like, it's insane.
Ooh. For me, it's got to be.
Ooh, that's true.
Yeah.
Perry was pretty gross.
Yeah.
Perry did make me want to lose my lunch a little.
Yeah.
That's the acid.
Yeah.
Yeah, the acid rain. Oh man,
So really
God, that's I really wasn't expecting that.
No.
They're
Having a
really
very
popping
different
off
vibe
right
over
now.
there.
Yeah.
We're gonna be a little louder.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to
Sorry.
talk up.
Kaylee, what about you?
I said Freddie.
Oh, that's your
Freddie.
favorite. And
Yeah.
Samantha, did you have a different one?
Oh man, I have to say I really love Victorine's death because
Oh, that's a good one.
I love how it all comes together. I love how Roderick comes in the house and says, "What's that sound? What's that smell?" Just
It's Alessandra.
the way that everything comes together, and I love when Vic says, "It's beating a useless dead heart." Oh, it's just so good. I feel like that one's really, that's when Roderick really starts to see like, oh, my kids are crazy.
Fruits of his labor.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'm a Tamerlane Usher apologist. I don't know. I love her. And I do think her death is like so satisfying because she's just a monster for like episodes and episodes, and it sort of goes in reverse birth order. So you're like, here we go. And it's just so satisfying when it finally happens. And I do think like some of why this show and Midnight Mass have that shared sort of like catharsis is just like the violence. And a ghost story is a different thing, and I love a ghost story, but I freaking love a monster.
Yeah.
And
Can I
this
just
one is
interject?
like,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I like the House of the Usher because all the other Mike Flanagan ones, as I mentioned before, it's these innocent people getting stuck in really bad situations. This one, they all deserve it.
Yeah,
Every
yeah,
time
you
someone
should
dies,
cry.
you're like,
Yeah,
yes.
the other ones, they're like, they're
You're
sad
crying.
stories,
Yeah, you're
and
crying.
this one, it's like a satisfying story.
And
I would
it's
say.
almost kind of humorous. Like the deaths are so over the top, and you're finally like,
Yeah.
yes.
Very different tone shift.
Yes.
And people who are familiar with the source material, like they're building to this Casa Amontillado situation that you're like, are they gonna do it? Literally, is it gonna be brick by brick? And they're like, yep. It's so amazing. So I think that's part of it too. Like Poe has been in the ether for hundreds of years at this point, multiple hundred. And so you know those stories even if you don't know those stories. And so you're like, wait, that's ringing a bell. Like the Raven, I know that from somewhere.
The Telltale Heart.
Telltale Heart, you know that from somewhere.
Yeah.
English class, you read a short story. And I think what's also kind of special about this one is that we've spent all these other shows with these folks. So there was also the Midnight Society, which we're not really talking about here, but some people from that were in Usher, and you're like, oh, my friends, let's watch them die horribly.
Because they
Really fun.
deserve it.
Because they
They're
deserve it.
awful.
They're monsters.
Each one is worse than the next.
Another thing I wanted to bring up that I loved about this one is going from Midnight Mass, which is a very New Englandy show. It's sort of a muted color palette, and it's beautiful in its own way because the island is stunning and the monster design is so amazing. We have not gotten to talk about these shows for long enough, but Bob the House of Usher was like, y'all heard of colors? Which was huge. And each of the children has kind of a color associated with them. So Tamerlane has the green, and I love that. I think that's just like a fun, easy filmmaking choice to cue people. Like, okay, we're doing a Victorine scene. See all the orange? And you can sort of like police yourself. So I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think was one of the like best kind of visual choices or like filmmaking choices in the fall of the House of Usher? So many to choose from.
Oh man.
I gotta go with the the throwing the fire poker up at the mirror and having it just rain down in slow motion. God, so beautiful, so gruesome. Really, just the fact that her own shattered reflection is what's killing her is just so poetic, so beautiful. So yeah, I'm gonna go with that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm gonna bring Prospero back up
Oh, Perry.
because if he would have paid attention to the family business, he would have known that he shouldn't be using the water stored in those tanks. But we all know he didn't pay attention, and that shot when they turn on the sprinklers and that first drop of rain is falling down onto his face, and then everyone just starts screaming and it's like this slippery sound as their skin's melting off, and it's pretty grisly. And to have that be like kind of the first death in the episode or in the show also just immediately sets the tone. Like, this is going to be very different from Hill House, even from Midnight Mass. We're going to be having really grisly deaths. Just
It's almost
yeah,
a slasher.
Prospero.
It's almost a slasher. Like, it's very
it's
close.
almost like a comedy.
It's like Final Destination, and
Yes.
that like, death is the killer, which the guy who made Final Destination is here at the con, just so you guys know.
Love
Go
him.
say hi.
Yeah, we all should go say hi to him after this panel.
And I love that concept of like, it's not a person, it's sort of like their own hubris, which is great.
Yeah.
Kaylee, what about you?
I'm gonna have to go with Perry's as well. That's I just started rewatching House of Usher, and that's what has stuck with me. Yeah, I just love the scene. Like, it's just falling down. Like, you just see all these bodies, and then like.
And you know what's
the
happening
first
before
drop.
they do.
Yeah,
I think we
visual,
like
it's
that one
beautiful.
because it's really Pretty Little Liars coded.
Yes,
She comes
that's
in the
true.
mask with the cape.
Oh my goodness.
Yes,
that's
it
so
does
good.
have Pretty Little Liars. I do want to talk just a little bit about the structure and how, again, it's sort of a Victorian writer, so they did this two people sitting around telling a story to one another, and we sort of get to go back as Roderick is telling Augusta Pan the story of his children and the commitment he made to like making his business, and how even though he like knew his children were gonna die, eventually he was like, that's fine, I'm gonna claim everybody who was my child. And his sort of journey and hubris, and he really at no point is like, and I regret it. Which is crazy. Like, he's such a good villain, and I love watching, another fun Flanagan thing is like seeing them in stages. So we have them as little children as they're like dealing with this difficult upbringing and their very religious mother. Then we see them as like young upstarts who are trying to like get into the biz of pharmaceuticals and stuff. And that's where we get to see some of their like ambition and everything. And I do love this discussion of like ambition, nepotism, earned wealth, all of that kind of stuff. So just as my final question, I kind of mentioned like, this is such a prescient thing, and it came out at such a time when we're all sort of like, wait a second, Nepo babies are everywhere, and are billionaires bad? So I wanted to talk about that, like, if you guys have thought about this at all, and maybe you can think about it now, just like ambition and sort of what is handed versus what is earned, and how that sort of influences the characters. I'll start with Froderick, as we all know him. He's the oldest, he's supposed to inherit this company, and everything has been given to him, and he believes that it is his right. And as a result of that, he perpetuates violence and horrible, horrible things on his wife and other people in his life because he just believes that he is simply better. And I think that's like a really good depiction of how that can sort of twist you when you're like put into this position of like wealth and power when you really didn't earn it. And I love the way that he portrayed that, and the way that it like sort of resulted in his continued misdeeds, and then of course the very cathartic death at the very end. Anything else? Anybody else you guys can think of like this sort of conversation of like earned? Because for example, Victorine, like she's a trained doctor, but
Yeah, but a fraud at the same time. Let's see. I mean, I think it's even just interesting to look at like Roderick and Madeline too. I love looking at them because
Madeline.
I love Madeline. Yeah, they're such, obviously they're the villains of the story, but then at the same time they were wronged by someone else, not Verna, like what's his name? The Griswold.
Yes.
They were wronged by him, and he's like the ultimate villain of the story, which I just kind of love that, like we have these technically Roderick and Madeline are the villains of the story, and yet here we are rooting for them. Like, don't die.
Yeah,
We love you
seriously.
guys.
Put those bricks on.
Yeah, I was like, please let all the kids die. Don't kill Madeline.
So I think it's so interesting to look at them and be like, I'm like, what they did, like their ambition, they're like wrong. Like the way their kids have all been raised. Like Lenore is like the only good one of the Ushers technically. Like I'd say Camille is really smart, but she's still she's terrible. Yeah. And so it's interesting to see like what they pass down, like, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think part of what's really interesting about the show is how it looks at how evil deeds sort of echo throughout time, and
Ooh, I like that.
yeah, and how like none of these kids like deserved what they got in terms of their money. They deserved what they got in terms of like in the karmic system of the show. But yeah, I mean, this all stems from the breaking him up. What was his name? I don't remember. Griswold. Yeah, it all stems from that one evil act that just echoes throughout time. So.
And they probably feel justified because they were like, well, we had it hard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, I sometimes feel justified for them. I get
Oh, I
it.
totally do.
I love the gray morality of these characters a
Yeah,
lot.
it is so fun.
Because I definitely have like favorites where I'm like, oh, I'm rooting for you. Why?
Even though they're all awful.
They're all terrible, and yet here we are.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about just the similarities across all the shows. Let's just ask a simple question. Like, what's everyone's like favorite cast, like actor that he's cast in all of the?
Raul Colin.
Oh, wait, who does he put?
He's the sheriff in Midnight Mass.
Owen in Bly.
Yes.
Owen
Okay,
Bly.
great.
Oh
And
my
he's
God.
Leo in Fall of the House of Usher.
He's just
so good.
Oh yeah, he's
so
fantastic.
incredible. Just an immaculate actor.
Also
so
hot.
handsome. So handsome.
Yeah, very, very hot.
And if there's any Dark Tower fans out there, if he doesn't play Roland, I'm gonna be very upset about that. He would be perfect.
You just put that in a couple heads, I can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to come out and say I am the biggest Samantha
I
Solian
was
fan in the world. She doesn't get cast elsewhere. Like, he really has, like, championed her career, and she is in Hush. And she plays Bev, and she plays Tamerlane, and she is just... She's very versatile. I like hate her. I love her. She's so good at playing these like really just despicable women, and she's really hard to find elsewhere. So it's always like this gift. Like, oh my gosh, I get to like watch her perform and play these really interesting, well-written characters. I love that woman.
Well, and
if you're out there, I love you.
She's so talented, and he really knew where to use her because he used her in Hill House, but in a very small role, and it's so fun to see her come up like and really break out, kind of essentially a breakout role, sort of in Midnight Mass, and be like, oh, okay, she's really good. Like, she's amazing. Samantha, what about you?
Olivia, the woman who plays Olivia, the mom from Spy Kids, you guys.
Gugino, yeah.
She's just so fantastic. She's good as a villain. She's good as a mother. She's good as a crazy ghost. She's good as a old British lesbian lady. I just love her. I love her. She can do no wrong.
I love that.
Also, are they doing like WWE?
I
Does anyone know?
Like,
It's loud.
so loud. I'm gonna go with Kate Siegel just because we have to.
The best.
She's incredible. She has such a wide range. We love her as Theo in Hill House. We love her as Erin in Midnight Mass. She's in Bly too. Like, she has such a...
Even good in Hush. I know
Yes.
that's technically in the Flaniverse.
And she's great as Camille.
Yeah, she's so good as Camille. It's fun to see her as Camille. Like, she just has such a range, and she has such an important, memorable role in each one of the shows that cannot be ignored.
Which
We love
tracks,
her.
given that she is married to Mike
Yeah,
Flanagan.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna give her good stuff, and she can take it for sure. She can do it all.
She can do it all.
Okay, let's see here.
They're quite a team.
Dying about this.
I know.
Just like final thoughts about like the Flaniverse in general and what you guys want to see next from him, what you've liked so far. Yeah, just like a general.
I really love how often he uses brick walls. There's brick walls references in Hill House, in Bly Manor, in Midnight Mass, then obviously in Usher. I mean, the Fall of the House of the Usher, the opening like shot starts and it's playing Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd. I mean, it's just the tiny little details that he adds in to kind of connect them to each other. He's a mastermind.
That makes me want to shout out another like collaborator of his. He always works with the Newton brothers, who are the composers of the shows, and the music they've written for Hill House and Bly is like beautiful. The Usher music is insanely good. They were able to do all this like religious sort of music for Midnight Mass. They're brilliant, and I think part of what makes Mike Flanagan work is he knows where to fill in his own gaps. He's like, okay, I'm gonna bring in a genius composer, I'm gonna bring in a brilliant cinematographer that can like really create, you know, the whole vision, and that's definitely something for me. Like, I'm definitely like a film score person, so I go back and listen to the music of all of these a lot, which is like weirdly really motivating. You'd think like a haunted house score, not so. It's so good.
Can never stop listening to Haunting of the Hill House theme. My
Never.
goodness, so good.
I think for me, I'm just really grateful to him for making horror TV shows a little bit more mainstream. They sort of had fallen out of fashion for a while, but after Hill House, it's become more common. So I'm just really glad that I'm glad he's around making these spooky stuff for us. Also, he has a movie coming out soon. I think I don't know if it has a distributor yet, but it's called The Life of Chuck. It's an adaptation of a Stephen King novella, but it's not horror. It's definitely not horror. Great novella though, and from what I hear, it's a masterpiece. So as soon as it starts playing, please go see it. It's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah.
I just love Mike Flanagan. I totally agree with what you said about making it really mainstream. And I've started watching some of his older movies. I did watch Absentia, so nice. I think it was such a good foray. Like Hill House really was like one of the first horror things I saw, and it's been such a good foray into like watching more and being like, oh, like this is really good and this is really fun. And it's just fun to see such a filmmaking masterpiece too. Like he really does it all. Like it's a great writing, great story, and then also just great cinema really. Like, and it's something we can watch over and over again and constantly be talking about, which is really fun. So.
Yes, the rewatchability is just
I don't think I would ever stop rewatching these shows. Like every Halloween, it's like, oh, time to watch everything.
Time to cry my eyes out.
So fun. Thank you guys so much for coming to this panel. We would love to talk to any of you. If you want to talk to us, we'll be outside. You can talk to Colin about his book, The Black Lord, which we would highly recommend. And we have also some Flanagan-themed bracelets.
Yes, Kailee made friendship bracelets if anyone's interested.
Because
they're really cute too. I'm wearing a bunch.
And we also have like stickers and stuff. So
come
Halloween
talk to
stickers. Come talk to us outside. Thank you guys for coming and dealing with whatever.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Enjoyed the rustling.